Well, hi everyone. I'm John Redland with a retro review of the NWA Great American Bash July 5th, 1986 event taking place at Charlotte Memorial Stadium. And I was excited to see this because after watching the 4-hour and change Crockett Cup 1986 event and liking half of it and being bored by the rest of it, I was hoping this would be better. And also I wanted to see it because it's Ric Flair versus Ricky Morton in a steel cage for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. Shut up and take my goddamn money. That right there is well worth sitting through this event. And also I was excited because I listened to Jim Cornette's podcast. So for those that didn't tune out immediately when I said that, I like how him and his co-host, Great Brian Last, gave some history, some background and everything, had some good banter. And I enjoy the historian side of Jim Cornette. I even enjoy some of the stuff that he says now, even though I recognize that some of the stuff he says is very problematic and he needs to change his views and he needs to do that stuff and he kind of needs to bring himself up to speed. But that being said, the historian side of him is really cool, and I really enjoyed that and was hoping that this event would be as good as described, as well as other events on this tour. And I think there's like one other 1986 event and maybe a couple 88 events. So I'm really stoked to review these as time goes on. But that being said, I would be remiss if I didn't say that some of this event was a slog. Now, there are times where things have aged really well. There are some matches that still stand up today. The main event and a couple others. But boy, it was really, really cool to see it in a stadium, and the crowd was really goddamn hot. I mean, I do miss crowds that were this fucking hot. But fucking hell, we start off with guys parachuting into the stadium, and look, that takes guts and talent that I just do not fucking have. That takes nerves of steel. Why was it on a wrestling show? I just don't fucking get it. There's also no commentary like the Crockett Cup event. And we have Steve Regal, no, not that one, versus Denny Brown's Junior Heavyweight Championship match. And look, I know very little about these guys. I mean, I've seen a few matches, but this did not need to be nearly 15, well, actually, it was 15 pissing minutes. It was a time limit draw. Fucking hell. It had a few fast-paced moments, which was kind of cool, but a lot of it was just rest holds, and it's like, why? Why were there so many goddamn rest holds? I'm not saying these guys need to go, 50 miles an hour and everything. I mean, it is in the 80s, and these guys were not Dynamite Kid and Tiger Mask. They weren't a few of the other junior heavyweights around, but seriously, if you're going to do a junior heavyweight match, even in America, even in the South, you got to do something a little bit better than this, and this just wasn't very good. Time limit draw, bit of a brawl afterwards. I don't know why. What the fuck was this? Then we have Robert Gibson versus Black Bart. Well, the crowd was just slightly electric for Robert Gibson, except they were absolutely electric. Rock and roll chants all over the goddamn place. And Black Bart, I believe, is the current Mid-Atlantic heavyweight champion. I believe that's what they said. And while Bart did hit a few moves, it was a crossbody off the ropes, and Robert Gibson got the victory to a thunderous pop. So we then have Arn and Ole Anderson versus Sam Houston and Nelson Royal. And Nelson Royal really did have that old-time territorial look to him, but was a good worker. And him and Sam Houston actually are a pretty good team here. And Arn and Ole, they're in a class all by themselves. Something good, classic tag team wrestling, cutting the ring off, all that stuff. Really good stuff here. Now, was it perfect? No, but they did have it where Arn and Ole kept cutting off, and Nelson and Sam would get their shots in. And eventually it looked like Sam had Arn pinned, but then Ole, from behind with a move off the ropes, and then Arn covers him 1, 2, 3. So that was good shit. That was good stuff. I really enjoyed that match. It maybe would have gone on a little bit long for some people, but I enjoyed this one. Now we have a bunkhouse match. Baron von Raschke with Paul Jones versus Manny Fernandez. They're in jeans and a t-shirt because they're dressed come as you are. We're in a bunkhouse, baby. Terrible Dusty impression. I'm so sorry. Weapons are legal. Of course, Manny bled. And despite all that stuff, you would think a knockout would win it. Nope. Inside cradle. 1, 2, 3. Also never got the appeal of Manny Fernandez. Even though I recognize that he was pretty over and he was definitely a blood and guts type guy. Maybe it's just because I'm too young. I mean, I am 39, but it's like I never really got into much of Manny's career. Maybe I need to go back and watch some of it. Recommend me some Manny Fernandez matches that are on the network, perhaps. Or some runs of his. World Class or stuff like that. Or wherever. Just let me, I think he worked in World Class. Just let me know where he worked that I should check out. And if it's on the network, I'll give it a shot. So, we have Jimmy Garvin. Gorgeous Jimmy Garvin, that is. Not Jimmy Jam Garvin, not the Freebirds version. Holy fuck. With Precious versus Wahoo Mcdaniel. Indian strap match. Gee, was there blood in this? You fucking bet there was. So much strapping action between two men. And, wait, that may be a little bit inappropriate. But then again, I tend to make things as inappropriate as possible on this show. Precious, of course, interferes, stops Wahoo. Wahoo at one point fell on a cameraman. To be fair, Wahoo had been wrestling for quite a goddamn while, so you take him off his feet, it takes him a while to get back up. And so eventually Wahoo wins. I believe Dustin Rhodes was driving the cart, which is kind of cool. You know, the future natural Dustin Rhodes, the future Goldust, the future nightmare Dustin Rhodes, and whatever. Amazing that he's still working even now. So we then get Tully Blanchard with J.J. Dillon versus Ron Garvin with Wahoo Mcdaniel in a tape fisting match, which probably would have been more interesting than I feel bad for saying that because I wanted to like this match more than I did, and I recognize they both did have a blood feud, and both, of course, bled. Of course, they fucking did, especially Tully. Of course, Tully bled. And, of course, Ron would bleed as well. I mean, there's no shock with these guys. And look, the match was fine. It was 10 3-minute rounds with a 30-second rest period in between. 30-minute rest period. Fuck, we'd be there all day. Tully at one point was knocked out, and JJ put something under his nose, and Tully was immediately revived. So you automatically know that Tully Blanchard was certainly coked out of his goddamn mind in the 80s. I recognize that he's clean now, and he certainly wasn't the only wrestler coked out of his skull, but fucking hell, that was just funny to me. This did go on a bit long. Eventually, there was a bit of a double knockout, and the referee ruled whoever got to their feet first would get the victory. And Ron Garvin got to his feet first because Wahoo dumped a bucket of water on him. So there we go. Road Warriors with Paul Ellering versus Ivan and Nikita Koloff. Double Russian chain match. And this one was pretty goddamn quick. The ref got bumped. Ivan tried to go to the top. Ellering shoved him off. And then Animal topped him 1, 2, 3. Get a brawl afterwards. So it wasn't very long. I think it was like 5 minutes tops. Maybe 6. But it was what it was. And I'm rushing through a lot of these because really, a lot of these matches just are what they are. One that shocked me, at least for how over he was, I mean, it's like, I really need to go back and watch more of this guy's career because what I've seen, he's hugely over despite not doing a whole lot later in his career. The Boogie Woogie Man, Jimmy Valiant, versus Shaska Whatley, easy for me to say, Pez Whatley. And it was a hair match. Whoever lost would get their hair shaved. Jimmy bleeds, of course. Manny and Baron run in for the respective guys. Manny to help Jimmy and Baron to help Pez. And they had the loaded glove thing. And oh no, Pez was trying to know he couldn't do it. And then Jimmy Valiant, because he feuded with Paul Jones for like ever. I think it was like the entire 80s. And he, hits him with the punch. Hits him with a loaded glove. 1, 2, 3. So they shaved Pez's head. He was a Pez head afterwards, and he was all freaked out and everything. That was a lot of hair though to get through because he had like he had the fro type hair, and it must have been difficult to get through that because when you get sweaty hair and you get those electric clippers, that can really be difficult. So I hope he didn't get hurt. I mean, it wasn't like Raven getting his head scalped in Impact, but it was what it was. And he's freaking out and everything. Oh no, my hair. Credit to him, though, for being willing to do that, because it would take a while to grow that hair out. So we then go to the Midnight Express and Jim Cornette versus Dusty, Magnum TA, and Baby Doll in a cage match. Well, it was all about Baby Doll before she, took a conservative approach to her life. Fucking idiot. And, it was all about her getting her hands on Cornette. We got blood. Of course we do. Baby Doll pins Jim after a punch. And then this is where Big Bubba had shown up. And this is I believe the infamous incident where the Midnight Express are holding him, and he's punching him in the side of the head, and you can actually hear it, and it was just kind of funny. Someone throws a drink at Bubba, which was kind of hilarious. In fact, it was really fucking hilarious. So now we get to Ricky Morton versus Ric Flair for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship in a steel cage. They just left the cage up because they were like, well, fuck, this is going to take forever to take down. Go just do that. And I kid, they already advertised it as a cage match. And I believe the whole thing of this tour was Flair's going to have to defend the NWA Championship against a different challenger on each show of the tour. And for the most part, I believe they stuck with it. But this was good. Ricky, in case anybody's wondering why he had the facial gear on him, this was when shortly after the Horseman had ground his face into the frickin' ground. It was like really brutal, like the cement floor. Pretty fucking brutal. And he had like the scars and everything and all over, so he's wearing that. But it was great. You had the hot crowd for Ricky Morton. They wanted to see him beat Ric Flair. Ric Flair arriving in the helicopter, and he had that news guy with him. I actually don't remember the news guy's name. I didn't write it down, but he was apparently a big fan and really had a lot of energy when he introduced Ric Flair. It was pretty cool. Great NWA World Heavyweight Championship match. They used the cage well. Ric Flair would win with his feet on the rope, but my God, Ricky Morton came so close. It was really good stuff. You could argue that maybe they should have put the championship on Ricky Morton right there, but I think at that point, excuse me, I think at that point, like, you know, they wanted to see him win it, but if he had won it, then maybe they would have been like, well, now what do we do? Kind of like what they did with Ron Garvin, even though they just did that to have a big moment at Starrcade the following year. But that was a pretty strong finish. Half the matches are good, half the matches are eh. So check this out if you want. It's a 3 hour, just under 3 hours. I think it's like 2 hours and like 54 minutes. But anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Retlin. I'll see you soon.